Chapter 14. Everybody took sick but me. I suppose everybody has one little particular chunk of time he wishes he could get back and live all over again. The one fine time I remember best and most lovingly was when whooping cough hit the schools, all the schools. It was what they called an epidemic. The epidemic struck about 2 weeks before the Christmas holidays started. First there was whooping cough, and then there was measles, and everybody came down with them except a few of us lucky ones. The teachers had them too, including the principal. There wasn't a thing to do but shut up shop and let the disease run their course. By the time the race was run, it'd be so close to Christmas that there wasn't any use in starting classes all over again just for a few days, so they knocked off school for nearly a month. I tried real hard to regret this unforeseen gap in my keen pursuit of such things as Latin and geometry, but it so happened I had enjoyed whooping cough and 2 kinds of measles, and I was salted. Maybe the other people were sick, but not me. I felt just fine. Chances are I was grinning all over my face when I got home the day they announced the closing of the schools. The old man looked sharply up at me and asked, "What happened to start you grinning like a chessy cat? Teacher break her leg?" "No, sir," I said. "Better. They just closed down the schools until after New Year's. We got an epidemic or something. School suspended. Hot diggity." "Look at you," the old man chided, "happy as a dead pig in the sunshine. Here you are, going to grow up ignorant, and all you can do is grin. I'm ashamed of you." "It's not my fault. I already had whooping cough and the measles," I protested. "I didn't close the school, but as long as it's closed, I don't figure to cry myself to death. I think I'll just go and shoot some squirrels. You want to come?" "Not me," the old man said. "This lumbago's got me. You're going to have to handle the misbegot holiday all by yourself. Just try to check in with me once in a while so I don't feel too left out of things." The old man slid down in a chair and shoved his specs a little higher on his nose and took to reading some book that must have weighed 10 pounds. I changed my school clothes and went off to look for some squirrels. I didn't take the bird dogs along. I took old Mickey, the spaniel. People today talk about a lot about those German Weimraners that'll hunt anything from rats to elephants, but I'll stick that Mickey up against any of them as a plain meat dog. She was a spayed golden cocker bitch, darn near as old as me and a whole lot fatter. She was a pure tea hunting fool. Mickey was slow, but she was certain. She would find a covey of quail as good as any professional quail dog, although she wouldn't hold a point. She'd slow down enough to give you time to get up with her before she let out a yip and jumped. She would run a possum at night or tree a coon. She was poison on rabbits because since she couldn't outrun them, she'd outthink them and run them past you. She loved to hunt squirrels, and she'd retrieve anything from a buck deer to a ground mole. She especially loved to go duck hunting because the colder the water, the better she felt. One time I saw a big old bull mallard just about drown her. I don't want to tell you any real big lies about Mick. She didn't run rabbits as good as a pedigree beagle. She wasn't as dead on woodchucks as a pet Chesapeake or a golden retriever. She didn't cover as much ground on quail as even a slow pointer, and she wasn't half the squirrel treer that little Jackie the Feist dog was. But for most purposes, she was the most all-purpose dog you ever saw. As long as the old man was laid up, I couldn't get too far away from base because I wasn't old enough then to drive the Liz, and there weren't many quail around where we were living, so it was a waste of time to hunt much with the bird dogs. But there was a whole lot of little bits of game, a few quail, a few ducks, rabbit, squirrel, snipe, so for one solid month it was me and Mickey. The cold had come, and there was a thin crust of ice on the ponds in the morning, not heavy enough to bear your weight, but enough to force the ducks into pools of free water. The leaves were off the trees so that you could see the squirrels, and a lot of the underbrush had died so that the rabbits were fairly easy. You could always find one in a brush pile. There were a few doves still in the fields. Shotgun shells cost a nickel apiece. I reckon that was the time when I picked up a very bad habit that has caused me a slew of complaints ever since. I wasn't then and never will be what is called a dedicated hunter, just burning to go and do one particular thing. I was more like a highly trained quail dog that has slipped his leash and is having a glorious time chasing rabbits. I like to go out and just sort of mess around with some number 8s in the shotgun and a few 4s in my hip pocket and 2 buckshot shells in my shirt pocket just in case a deer should run up and start out to trample me. One of the days I spent might have been typical of most of the days, and I'll try to tell you how it was. I was out of the bed in a cold black night, with just a little glow in the old square stove in the living room. I dressed as close to it as I could get, and then went back into the kitchen and ate a cold sweet potato, a pickle, a glass of milk, and some leftover pound cake. I stuck a couple of apples and a bag of raisins in my hunting coat, and didn't forget to grab a handful of matches on the way out. In addition to the gun and the shells, I carried a small belt axe and a hunting knife and a light army canteen. That was all I needed to be Daniel Boone. Miss Mickey and I started out to conquer the country. We'd go first, stumbling and half frozen in the black morning, to a duck pond about half a mile away, and creep very quietly in the dark down to the water's edge and hide in some brush I'd stacked up to make a blind. When the first gray light came, there would be ducks on that pond, some butterballs and bluebills, and a gray duck or a black mallard or so. I knew what I was going to do as soon as there was enough faint light to see by. I was going to pop off the first barrel at a clump of them on the water and then bang at a flyer as they went away. Mostly I was good for about 4 more shots because they'd circle the woods and come back again in small bunches. On a good morning I was cinched to bag about 4, 5, 6 ducks, especially if I got a couple on the water. This one morning I got only one on the water, and a wounded one fluttered up, and I gave him the other barrel just so I wouldn't have to go and hunt him in the woods. The ducks made their first return run, and I knocked down another and missed one going away. Then a fresh segment came in, and I was lucky. I got one coming and one going. The first one I hit in the head. He went up about 100 yards in the air like a skyrocket and came plummeting down as dead as a mackerel. Well, that was a fine start, I said to Mick as she plunged into the icy water. 1 black mallard, 2 butterballs, a bluebill, and a gray duck. We'll now hang these ducks in a tree and go and investigate the squirrel situation. Mickey fetched the last duck and looked at me as she shook herself. That's fine, she said. Man, that water's cold. We were just a few rods from a big stand of hardwood trees, hickory mostly, with a few wild pecans that had sprung up a long time ago when nobody was farming there. You'd almost always pull a few squirrels out of it because there were acorns and pine mast as well. We walked very slow and quiet, and you could hear the squirrels chittering and making that click-clack noise on the nuts, and once in a while that long metallic churring sound. Mickey and I hunted very scientific. If the squirrels were on the ground, she'd chase them up a tree and raise the roof barking. The squirrels would watch her, and I would edge around the other side of the tree and shoot. One morning I saw a big black and gray fox squirrel go into a nest, and I shot into the nest, and 4 fox squirrels fell out. This morning we didn't have that kind of rich luck. There weren't any squirrels on the ground, so I told Mickey to hush, and we sat quiet under a tree and called the squirrels, slipping the safety of the gun back and forth to sound like teeth on nuts, and making that squirr noise with my tongue. A couple of the fool squirrels came skidding through the trees to investigate the noise, and I collected the pair. We picked up one more by accident as we walked through the timber stand, heading for a big deserted pea field that usually had some quail in it. Mickey lumbered off to go where she figured the birds ought to be, and sure enough, they were there. She shook her stubby tail and wiggled her rear end like she'd slipped a ratchet somewhere, and the birds got up wild ahead of her. I shot twice and downed one. I reloaded, and two lay birds got up, and I killed one and missed the other. The birds went into a wild grape swamp that was so thick they weren't worth following. So we quartered the field, and I shot one dove that got up ahead of me. We were doubling back around to pick up the ducks and go home for lunch when Mickey cocked her ears and jumped a big buck rabbit, and I added him to the bag. When she fetched him, he looked bigger than she was. I pulled out my dollar watch, and it was only 10 o'clock, so I decided to stop and light a fire and clean the game. There wouldn't be any lunch for another 2 hours anyhow. I took the belt axe and hacked off some pine knots and a couple of chunks of dead logs and built me a blaze. I shucked the squirrels and the rabbit and opened them up and started on the ducks. I had already eaten the apples and the raisins, and I was still hungry, so I took one of the quail and plucked him and stuck him on a green stick over the coals. He tasted a little burnt feathery and a touch raw, but he filled enough corners so that I could make it to lunch without starving. Mickey ate the innards, she being a rather indelicate bitch. When I got home, I washed the ducks and the one quail and the dove and the 3 squirrels and the rabbit, and cut them up, and put them in the icebox. Then I washed my hands and went to lunch, which was black-eyed peas cooked with sow belly and a hard country ham and bright golden cornbread and milk and apple pie with cinnamon dusted on it. Then I took a little nap after asking Big Fat Lil, the cook, to wake me up at 2 p.m., about the same time I'd generally be thinking of getting out of school. I reckon I smiled when I slept because all I had to do that afternoon was what I'd done that morning, only in reverse order. Rabbits first, then quail, doves, squirrels, ducks. I performed this routine every day except Sunday for 3 weeks. Christmas Eve came, and the old man, better now of his lumbago, asked me what I thought I'd like to find under the tree the next morning. I didn't stop to think before I spoke. Nothing that I can think of, I said. I've had my Christmas, except maybe I need some shotgun shells. I'm about shot out. The old man grinned. He'd been watching me every day, stumbling home dead beat with a backload of game. I sure am glad that epidemic of yours is about played out, or there'll be nothing else left in this neck of the woods to shoot. Remember what happened to the buffaloes? Christmas morning dawned bright and clear, but I wasn't there in the house to see it. I was down by the duck pond, with Mickey shivering beside me. I had clean forgot to go to look under the Christmas tree.